This summer, the world must answer one question. Why has no one made a popsicle that gets you high yet? That's right, it's summer, and it's time for you to get your hands on America's new favorite product, Danksicles. 20 milligrams of THC in 2 great flavors, the latest and greatest innovation from IndaCloud. Is IndaCloud the greatest company to come out of America? Maybe. But what we do know for sure is that IndaCloud is the best way to get dispensary-grade cannabis delivered directly to your door, 100% legally. Yes, they ship legally to all states. No medical card needed. Whether it's vapes as big as your head, flowers you won't find in your mom's garden, or of course, popsicles that get you high as... What are you waiting for? Go to indacloud.co/spring24 and get discreet delivery on top-shelf THC products. Head over to indacloud.co/spring24. That's co, not com, to snag 30% off your first order. Menopausal and perimenopausal women, listen up. It's time to take control of your health and comfort, and Winona is here to help. Winona is a telemedicine company for menopause care who believes that your symptoms are real, important, and deserve to be taken seriously. And for many women, this starts with hormone replacement therapy. Winona's HRT is made with plant-based, bioidentical hormones rather than synthetic ones, so it better aligns with your body to offer relief from hot flashes, weight gain, and other uncomfortable symptoms. 80% of women who use Winona find relief within just 90 days. So, what are you waiting for? Get started today. Visit buywinona.com today to start your free visit. With free shipping and the ability to pause or cancel at any time, your path to wellness has zero obligations. Use code SPRING24 at buywinona.com for 25% off your first treatment plan. That's BYWINONA.com for 25% off. Winona, menopause care made easy.
This antivirus creator, presidential candidate, and international fugitive committed suicide in his jail cell? Follow me down the rabbit hole about John McAfee. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the rabbit hole. I'm your host, Danny, and today we are talking about John McAfee. So thank you, Kevin, and my husband actually also sent this to me for suggesting this episode. Now, this isn't necessarily a fake death, although, maybe I didn't find a whole lot of evidence that it was faked. But there is a lot more to the story than he killed himself in his jail cell. Feels very Epstein-esque, if you ask me. And I know what you're thinking. Well, why don't you just cover Epstein, Danny? I'm going to. Please just give me a minute while I get all the information together. Okay, so this guy lived a wild life. John David McAfee was born on September 18th, 1945 in Gloucestershire, England. Not sure if I said that right. There's a lot of shires and shires in the UK. So I know I have a lot of listeners from there. So if you guys could correct me, that'd be awesome. Thank you. He was born on a U.S. Army base to an American father, Don McAfee, and a British mother, Joan Williams. John said he felt as much British as he did American. Don was from Roanoke, Virginia, and the family settled back in Virginia, where John was primarily raised. But Don, wasn't a nice guy at all. He was an abusive alcoholic, and John lived in constant fear of his father. When John was 15, Don killed himself with a gun. It is theorized that maybe John might have shot his father and killed him and then staged it to look like a suicide. That is just a theory that I found on the internet. You do with that what you want. But either way, Don did kill himself or was dead by the time John was 15. John attended Roanoke College and received his bachelor's degree in mathematics in 1967. And while there, he began his really bad drinking habit. Really bad. After receiving his bachelor's, he went on to Northeast Louisiana State College to pursue his doctorate in mathematics. but he was expelled from that school just a year after he started his doctorate program because he was having a relationship with an undergraduate student, which I guess was against the rules. This undergrad, Fran, became his wife, but they were both young and it ended in divorce eventually. I don't know the exact timing of their marriage, how long they were married, but it didn't last long, is what I gathered. During the 1960s, he worked on coded punch cards, which was his first experience in the computing industry. And this experience helped him to get the job at the Missouri Pacific Railroad. And while working there, he started to experiment with drugs, specifically LSD. And he would often go to work high because he wanted to. I don't know. I feel like that's dangerous. He also tried DMT during this time. If you don't know what DMT is, it's like a shorter high, but like more intense. In 1968, after being expelled from his doctoral program, he became a programmer at NASA. He was only there until like 1970, but this was a great time to work for NASA because what happened during this time? We landed on the moon? Question mark. We may or may not have landed on the moon, but man, they probably it was an exciting time at NASA because they believed that we landed on the moon. Whether you believe it now or not, that's neither here nor there. Throughout the 70s and into the 80s, he kind of bounced around jobs a decent amount, which was unusual for the time, even though it's not unusual for our time now, but it seemed to work really well for him the way we're seeing it worked well in our current society. And I'm sure he was getting a lot of experience that we will see him use like throughout his whole future. After NASA, he was hired at UNIVAC as a software designer, and then he went to Xerox as an operating system architect. And in 1978, he joined Computer Sciences Corporation as a software consultant. From 1980 to 1982, he worked for a consulting firm, but I think he was still working in like the software world. Now, it's not super clear what he did from 82 to 86. Maybe he was he was already working for Lockheed Martin the whole time. Maybe he was bouncing around from jobs. It's, like I said, not super clear. But in 1986, while he was working for Lockheed Martin, he read about a brain computer virus that was made for PCs. And this virus scared him. It scared him so much, in fact, that he decided to do something about it, which is where all great ideas come from, right? Like, there's nothing on the market, you're freaking out, you need to do something about it. That's what he did. So he created the first antivirus that could detect the computer virus and remove it automatically, which was like amazing. Now you have to remember that computers and the internet were like new-ish, right? Like places like NASA had computers and they were huge. They were like the size of an entire room and they had been using these things. They were pretty new still. The internet was decently new as well. So this idea of like the computer and the internet had been around since the 60s, but most companies didn't really start like using computers for all their people and even really like the internet until the 80s and into the 90s. It was a really new idea. So, John McAfee was literally on the ground floor of this business opportunity. He saw a need, he filled a need. In 1987, he created McAfee Associations Incorporated to start selling the software, and he had named the software Virus Scan. And it was the first antivirus software brought to market and one of the first software products to be distributed over the internet, which again was a new idea. Things weren't distributed over the internet yet. At first, he didn't seek a large user base. He was just looking to raise awareness of the need to protect your computer from viruses. Especially with this being such a new concept, people needed to know how to protect themselves and even that they needed to protect themselves. But by making people aware that they were at risk, he generated a fear around the malware, which in turn generated millions in sales. Which, I don't know. Okay, I don't know if that was intentional or if it really is like as innocent as they portrayed it to be, but either way, genius business idea. By 1990, he was making $5 million a year, which is about $12 million today. And this was only 3 years into business. So that's a huge jump in 3 years. Also, in 1990, he married his second wife, Judy. She was a flight attendant. Their marriage didn't last either. We'll get into that later. In 1992, the company was incorporated in Delaware and its stock launched. The antivirus was really put to the test that year because of the Michelangelo virus, and McAfee antivirus actually worked and people were surprised. So this was a turning point for the company because now everyone could see the value in the product. In 1993, John stepped down as CEO but stayed on as chief technical officer, and that's when Bill Larson took over as CEO. But in 1994, he sold his remaining stake in the company and they parted ways. That same year, he founded the company Tribal Voice. This company developed one of the first instant messaging programs called Powwow. In 2000, he invested in Zone Labs and joined the board of directors. Zone Labs made firewall software. He also bought a large property in Colorado and opened a yoga and meditation retreat. And he authored 4 books on yoga and meditation. In 2002, he and his wife Judy divorced. In the early 2000s, I'm not exactly sure the time frame, John invested in ultralight flights, which he marketed as aerotrekking. Aerotrekking is where lightweight aircraft are flown at low altitudes over natural terrain, like mountains or valleys or something really beautiful that you want to see. Actually, they do it out here a lot. In 2008, he was a defendant in a civil case related to a death of his nephew and a passenger while aerotrekking. John invested in and or built several mansions, I think like 9 mansions around the US around 2007-ish. But when the bubble popped and the market crashed, he lost millions. His personal fortune had gone from $100 million to just $4 million by 2009. Also in 2009, he relocated to Belize. He purchased a beachfront property and then more land inland. He also hired a large group of armed security guards to be with him at all times. He participated in the CNBC special, The Bubble, decade later that year, and on this special, he talked about his misfortune, and he also discussed his plans to use the land that he bought in Belize to raise plants for medicinal purposes. Which, up to this point, John McAfee has been like on the cutting edge of everything, right? Like he has been just doing amazing things in his life. So the fact that he's going to use his land to raise plants for medicinal purposes, that kind of threatens big pharma. So I don't know if that puts a target on his back later on, but that's definitely something that I didn't think about until literally just now. In February 2010, he started that venture, the medicinal medicine thing. He and biologist Allison Adonizo started the company Quorinex, which was headquartered in Belize and aimed to produce herbal antibiotics. They were making antibiotics specifically that disrupted quorum sensing in bacteria. So Allison accused John of sexual assault, but no charges were ever brought to him, and I think that's probably what ended their relationship because we don't hear about that anymore. In April 2012, his property in Belize was raided by the Gang Suppression Unit, and John was arrested for unlicensed drug manufacturing and possession of unlicensed weapons. Apparently, corrupt officials were trying to extort him for money, and John just wasn't going to play their game. He was like, nope, absolutely not. So that's when they sent in the Gang Suppression Unit. He was released without charge, and he was the only suspect in the crime. But when the government raided his house, they seized all of his assets. In November, Belize police were searching for John as a person of interest in a homicide investigation. This is where things get really weird. So, McAfee's neighbor, who was an American immigrant, Gregory Viant Fall, was found dead of a gunshot wound in his own house. So he was the sole person of interest, John being the sole person of interest in this case, because he and Fall had a very tumultuous relationship. So John had a lot of dogs. He loved dogs. He had like 9 dogs on his property in Belize. And they were not like well-behaved dogs. They barked all the time. They were like pretty vicious sometimes, but sometimes they weren't. So it was this really weird situation. So Fall actually told his mom one time when she came to visit, "We're going to walk by the dogs. Sometimes they're aggressive, so we just need to watch out." But his mom said that Fall moved to Belize to just like retire and like live a peaceful life and just hang out. But Fall actually told one of his friends that he was going to quote unquote take care of those dogs and that he was going to poison the dogs. Then, one night, poisoned meat was thrown over the fence. All 9 dogs ate the meat and were poisoned and died. All 9 of the dogs. Which, like, that would piss anybody off. You would be so angry. The very next night, Fall was killed. Coincidence? Maybe? I don't know. That seems very coincidental. But John avoided the police and all their questions because he said he was afraid they were going to kill him. So he went as far as to like bury himself in the sand and put a cardboard box over his head to not be found by the police before fleeing Belize for Guatemala. However, his location was given away by Vice magazine when they forgot to remove the geolocation metadata that was still attached to the photo. So he was in Guatemala. He had petitioned for political asylum there, but he was arrested for entering Guatemala illegally and then was denied asylum. So while awaiting deportation to Belize, he had had some health conditions arise. It's not clear what source is true or false on his health conditions. He had a heart attack, apparently. It was believed to be a real heart attack. Later on in interviews, he said he faked the heart attack, which I don't know if you can fake a heart attack. I don't know much about that. But he said he faked the heart attack. His lawyer actually said it was an anxiety attack instead of a heart attack, which I know that sometimes they can feel one and the same. I'm not really sure what happened here. Either way, because of this health condition situation, they sent him back to the U.S. instead of Belize. After he got back to the U.S. from Guatemala, he had hired a sex worker to keep him company, give him a little lovin', and the two began a relationship and married in 2013. She claims that he saved her from sex traffickers, and she's with him until his death. They seem very in love. I'm not here to judge what she did as a profession before. They seem like they love each other. Also in 2013, John uploaded a video to YouTube. And this video was meant to be like a parody called How to Uninstall McAfee Antivirus. In this video, he's like snorting white powder. He's being stripped by scantily clad women. On the table in front of him are boxes labeled bath salts and there's guns. It's actually a really funny video. It initially received like 10 million views. Now it's been reposted on YouTube by other people. And so when you find it, it doesn't have 10 million views anymore. It has like hundreds of thousands, but it's really funny. It's supposed to be like everyone's kind of like calling him out and being like, we can't uninstall McAfee. So this actually, I really enjoyed watching this. I linked it in my show notes if you want to go watch this funny YouTube video. Just for a little giggle. Lastly, in 2013, must have been a big year for him, he founded Fortune Tints Central. So this company was to produce a secure computer network device called the D Central. By 2016, it was also a company incubator, which means it helps startups and individuals develop their companies. In 2014, he announced his smartphone app Cognizant. So this app told users about the permissions of other installed apps. So now, I don't know about on Android phones, but on Apple, when you go to download an app, it tells you everything that the app needs. For an example, like TikTok, it needs data used to track you, so like contact information, identifiers, data linked to you, so purchases, location, contacts, search history, identifiers, diagnostics, financial information, contact information, user content, browsing history, usage data, and then also data not linked to you, which is usage data. So Apple tells you all these things now. I just looked it up. But before that, nothing told you what the apps needed. And this is a pretty recent thing that Apple's doing within the last year and a half maybe. So this is 2014 when he created this app. Just a few months later, they renamed it Decentral One. And in August of that year, he attended the DEF CON conference in Las Vegas. This conference, like a hacker convention, and there he gave a talk warning people not to use smartphones. He said apps were being used to spy on clueless consumers. In September 2015, he announced his bid for president of the United States. So at first, he was running as a candidate of a newly formed political party, the Cyber Party. Then in December of 2015, he re-announced his bid for presidency, seeking the nomination from the Libertarian Party. So his running mate was Judd Wise, a photographer and real estate broker, and he came in second in the primaries and third in the 2016 Libertarian National Convention. In 2016, he became the chief evangelist of security startup EveryKey. So in February, he publicly volunteered to decrypt the iPhone used by Rizwan Farouk and Tashfeen Malik. I feel like I'm saying those names wrong. I really apologize. So if you don't know, these two men were responsible for the terrorist act at the Inland Regional Center in San Bernardino, California in December of 2015. 14 people died and 22 others were injured in this attack. Both men died in a shootout with law enforcement. In February, the FBI announced that they couldn't unlock one of the phones they found at the home of the terrorist because security features, right? It was an iPhone. So that's when John stepped in and offered to help. Apple actually declined to create this iOS that could disable certain security features, basically claiming that it was a violation of the policy that they had to never undermine the security features of its products. So it's kind of this huge ordeal, like, this could tell us more information, we need it, but also people's privacy is really important. So it was a huge debate. In May of 2016, John was appointed the chairman and CEO of the technology holding company MGT Capital Investments, and they were going to change the name of the company to John McAfee Global Technologies, but they couldn't because Intel actually holds the rights to the McAfee name because of the antivirus. He also changed the focus from social gaming to cybersecurity of MGT because, quote, antivirus software is dead. It no longer works. The new paradigm has to stop the hacker getting in, end quote. So soon after joining MGT, he and his team exploited a flaw in the Android operating system that allowed him to read encrypted messages from WhatsApp. Before this, WhatsApp was known for its encrypted messages that you could send everything pretty securely. Now everyone knows that WhatsApp really isn't as secure. MGT moved into mining Bitcoin to increase the expertise in dealing with blockchain. John thought that this was so important for cybersecurity. In August 2017, he stepped down as CEO of MGT and decided he wanted to be the chief cybersecurity visionary instead. In January 2018, he left the company altogether. The company was told by investors that they needed to separate from John McAfee, and he wanted to focus on cryptocurrency, so they split, but they did say that it was pretty amicable. In June, he announced that he would be running for president in the 2020 election. He was either going to run with the Libertarian Party or he was going to create a party to run with, and he decided that he wanted to run with the Libertarian Party. In August, he took another CEO position with LuxCorp, a cryptocurrency company. In November, he was supposed to appear for a wrongful death lawsuit of Gregory Fall in Florida that his mom filed, but he failed to appear, so he was found at fault for the wrongful death and was ordered to pay $25 million to Fall's estate. In January 2019, John tweeted that he would still be running for president, even, quote, in exile. So he was referring to the fact that he had not paid taxes since 2010, and he wasn't quiet about it either. So he stated that he was a quote-unquote prime target of the IRS. He had basically decided that taxes, income taxes specifically, were illegal, which is why he stopped paying them. So he went on the run and was living on his yacht. Again, now he's on the run for the second time in his life. But around the same time, he had defended a communist, so it didn't make him very popular with libertarians. He's still running for president. He's on the run, so he can't even be in the U.S. It's a whole thing. In July, he was arrested while on his yacht, and his yacht was docked in the Dominican Republic. So basically, they were suspicious of high-caliber weapons and ammunition. The weapons were seized, and McAfee and the others on his yacht were held for 4 days, and then they were released. In March 2020, he suspended his presidential campaign, endorsed Vermin Supreme, and announced his campaign for the Libertarian vice president nomination, all in one tweet. And then the next day, he took it back, decided he wanted to run for president because no one in the Libertarian Party would even consider him for vice president. Nobody wanted him. Then the next month, McAfee endorsed Adam Kokesh and became his vice presidential candidate. And as we know, Joe Jorgensen actually got the Libertarian nomination for 2020. In August, McAfee falsely stated that he was arrested in Norway after refusing to take the lace thong off his face and put on a proper mask. Because, of course, this is all during the height of COVID, right? So he's just like world traveling on his yacht all during COVID. Anyway, he tweeted a picture of himself with a black eye, claiming that it happened during the arrest. And in the photo of the alleged arrest, the policeman shown had the German word for police on his uniform, which means that there was no way he was being arrested in Norway during this time. Anyway, it was kind of weird. Like, I don't understand. Was he trying to throw people off his trail? In October, he was arrested in Spain at the request of the U.S. Department of Justice for tax evasion. Basically, he had made millions between 2014 and 2018 and didn't pay any income taxes at all on any of that money. There is a conspiracy theory about income taxes that I have not yet covered. I will cover it, but I'm also nervous because I don't want to convince anybody to stop paying their taxes. It's definitely not the point. Anyway, the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission filed a complaint further alleging that he and his bodyguard promoted certain initial coin offerings in a fraudulent cryptocurrency pump and dump scheme. I'm not sure if there's any validity to this claim, but it was another thing to throw on top. In March 2021, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Southern District of New York indicted him on charges. So he was put in jail in Spain, waiting for extradition to the U.S. And in June 2021, the authorization came to extradite him to Tennessee because the initial charges came from Tennessee. That's why the Department of Justice put him in jail. And then he's got this complaint alleging the pump and dump scheme, and then he's got these charges from New York. So he's got charges in 2 different states now. The extradition came from the state of Tennessee. New York had not finished whatever they needed to finish to extradite him yet. It is suspected that he committed suicide a few hours after the authorization came to extradite him. Officially, on June 23rd, 2021, John McAfee was found dead in his prison cell just hours after the Spanish National Court ordered his extradition to the U.S. They said everything indicates that he killed himself by hanging, and his autopsy also confirmed that it was a suicide. The conspiracy started almost immediately because just 2 years prior, he tweeted, "If I suicide myself, I didn't. I was whacked." And I know that was 2 years prior, but he was also like in exile for a while, and then he was in jail for a while. So it wasn't like he said it 2 years ago and then just forgot about it. Like, this all was conspiring all at the same time. So anyway, John was always talking about how the government was listening and watching us, how our computers and phones could be hacked at any time. Like, so many people called him paranoid, but he had been in the business since the beginning. So if anyone was going to know something about it, wouldn't it be him? But I'm sure you're wondering, like, why would they kill him? Like, what is the motive here? He claimed in tweets that he had files on corruption in governments, multiple governments, and that he would be naming names and specifics. That specific tweet came out 2 years prior to his death. So a lot of these tweets are actually from 2019 because of all the things. He was on the run and doing all the things in 2020 and in 2021. Another tweet that came out in 2019 was from his manager that read, "If John misses his next check-in, events will be set into motion that I cannot prevent once they have begun. John has secreted data with individuals across the world. I know neither their identities or locations. They will release their payloads if John goes missing." But he had also tweeted all kinds of other very interesting things. We know that the pandemic didn't really fully start here in America until March, right? Obviously, COVID-19 had been around since like November, December timeframe, or like the outbreaks, right? But here in America, we didn't go into lockdown until March 2020. On February 5th, 2020, John McAfee tweeted, "Do not, under any circumstances, take the vaccine." In February of 2020. The vaccine wasn't even released until December of 2020. So that seems odd. It's like they killed him for more reasons than just the fact that he might have information on corrupt governments. Like, he might have had an influence over people in the COVID situation. Because as it was, this tweet had 14,000 likes, almost 8,000 reposts, almost 400 comments. Like, he had quite the influence over people. He also tweeted other concerning things. So in October of 2020, he was in jail in Spain. And his tweet says, "I am content in here. I have friends. The food is good. All is well. Know that if I hang myself, a la Epstein, it will be no fault of mine." So this is the second tweet. So the first tweet said, like, if I get suicided, no, I didn't. That was from 2019. This is from 2020. Just when he went into prison. So he's like saying over and over, like, "I'm not going to kill myself. I'm not going to kill myself." And then he killed himself. That doesn't seem to match, but okay. And just 3 days before his death, his wife released a letter that she had written on Twitter. It reads, in part, "John's honesty has often gotten him in trouble with corrupt governments and corrupt government officials because of his outspoken nature and his refusal to be extorted, intimidated, or silenced. Now the U.S. authorities are determined to have John die in prison to make an example of him for speaking out against the corruption within their government agencies." This came out 5 days after John released a video from his Spanish prison basically saying the same thing. "If the U.S. extradites me, I will spend the rest of my life in prison because they want to make an example of me." Upon first seeing the video by John, it seems like he was talking about tax evasion, right? That's why he's going to jail. You're like, yeah, of course they're trying to make an example of you. But if you investigate it, as I always do, it might be because he had so much dirt on so many people. He knew what was really happening in the world. He knew the real behind the scenes of the COVID not the vaccine, the COVID pandemic and the vaccine, like everything that was happening. He was like he wasn't ever a dumb guy. He was always being very intelligent about what was happening. The cryptocurrency thing, the COVID thing. I mean, all the way back to when he first came out with antivirus. That was before anybody was like, oh, viruses are probably an issue. We should probably do something about them. He was like, yeah, we should do something about them. And he did something about them. He was one of the first to be like, yeah, government can spy on you through apps on your phone. Like, he was always kind of in the know. So the example that they are making of him could just be, if you know too much, we will kill you. Look at Epstein. Look at, if you become a threat to us, look at McAfee. Like, you will kill yourself. You will be suicided. The day he was dead, I don't know which direction we're going here. The day he was killed, a Q, just the letter Q, was posted on his Instagram, and then his Instagram was deleted. The Q is theorized to represent QAnon, to be like they know what's actually happening. He knew too much. He was a huge advocate for hiring the Chinese and Russians who had hacked our systems and stolen our data, saying that we should hire them to secure our systems. But of course, they're like, no, they're just going to, like, he hated taxes. He didn't pay his income tax. He was also trying to convince the public to invest more in cryptocurrency to avoid income taxes. Recently, they have found a way to tax cryptocurrency. Of course, they're going to try to get their money. But at the time, cryptocurrency, you didn't have to pay taxes on it because it's universal. It's blockchain, right? But they could have made an example of him by putting him in jail for the rest of his life. So why kill him? Unless he was right about everything. Unless he was right about the income tax and the cryptocurrency and the corrupt governments and the vaccines. Unless he was too right. Unless they were concerned that he was going to talk, right? Because that was the concern with Epstein, is that he was going to talk. So how do you shut him up? He killed himself. I don't know. After his death, his wife came out and said that he was not suicidal. And I mean, McAfee said that multiple times. He was not suicidal. He even specifically said, I'm not going to hang myself. And then he hung himself. She said that they knew he was going to be extradited. Like, that wasn't like a surprise. Nobody was blown away. Oh my gosh, John is extradited. No, like, they knew it was coming. And they had a plan in place. They had talked with their lawyers. They knew what to do. She said she talked to him just a few hours before he was found dead, and he was totally fine, not suicidal. She believes his death was politically motivated. Which party, who did it, I don't really know. I don't have those answers for you. I'd love to hear what you think, actually. If you want to tell me who you think did it, or if he actually suicided himself, or if maybe he was killed. Until next week, my friends, stay skeptical, and I'll see you all then. Hey friends, The Rabbit Hole is an independent podcast with everything you hear done by me, Danny Mercy. I appreciate all of your support. Please rate and review wherever you're listening. If you want to follow us on Instagram, it's at rabbit.holepodcast. And thank you, Zakar Balaha, for our awesome intro.